Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode number
I think it's 17.
17.
Woo, woo,
We're
woo.
climbing up there. Today we want to talk a little bit about intention.
Yeah.
This is a really tricky one. We've talked about it before, but we had a question sent in to us by one of our listeners about...
Which, thank you, by the way. Thank you
Yes.
for your emails. Thank you for your questions. Love them. Keep them coming. Thank you also for your reviews. Appreciate that. The written ones and the starred ones. Feel
That's
free
right.
to keep doing that.
If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us at amy@linkfordlifecoaching.com or Greg at linkfordlifecoaching.com. Hard to remember, but I know, get in there. We'd love to hear from you. But they talked about how we can do the very same things. We can approach the same problem. We can say the exact same thing, but it's the intention behind it and what we're trying to get or not get that makes it come off that way. And this is really difficult for me because I always was in a mode of trying to get something, whether it was validation, as we talked about as a validation whore, or I was trying to get laid. That was part of my validationness too.
And we just talked in my last podcast that I was an overfunctioning whore. I was always trying to solve my anxiety by overfunctioning for others.
That's right. So our listener brought up the example we talked about in the earlier podcast about the simpleness of me potentially buying flowers for Amy and giving them to him.
It could be a nice gesture.
Or it could be me trying to say, hey, you should spend time with me tonight.
Or it could be guilting me into something like, look at all the things I do that you don't do. In the life coach school where I was trained, they use a model, and this model does have some uses. And part of this model is based in cognitive behavioral therapy, which says that the thought and feeling state that we choose to do our action from matters more than the action itself. And I think that's what we're trying to describe here. So the same action of giving flowers could be done from the thought of, I love this person and I want to give to them, and the feeling is generosity. And the action then is to give generously. Or the thought could be, I really want to get some action tonight, and the feeling is trying to get or take, and that's the action. That's the meaning behind the action of giving flowers. Or the thought might be, I want to look really good here and look like I'm better than I actually am, so I'm going to be the one doing this more forward gesture to present myself, sort of like maybe like a performance, to present myself as the better one, kind of in a one-up way. And so then the feeling behind that might actually even be like condescending.
Yeah.
So this is just a small example, but the simple act of giving flowers, behind it, the motivation, the thought, the feelings, the why matter more than the actual act of giving the flowers.
And the crazy thing is we think that we're doing it really sneaky. But our spouse is really, really, really good at tracking our intentions.
Like we talked in our last podcast, when you say would all of a sudden get this urge to mop the floors, I wasn't tracking that like, oh, he really wants to be invested and be a partner. I was tracking that he is trying to earn something and get something.
Yep. And it was true, right? I was looking at all the ways that I can manipulate the situation and be able to be on the good side of Amy so that I can get what I wanted, instead of being a true partner with her and being understanding that, you know, there's a different intent behind it and the action could be the same. I think one of the things that probably has been asked me a million times when we talk about it is, you know, we talk about the situation where I finally understood that I was doing everything out of validation. And when I'd asked Amy the hard questions about what was hard about being married to me, and she was honest with me, and they hit home and I knew they were true, I came back to her and I said, hey, listen, babe, I want you to go take care of yourself. You go figure out your sexuality and what you want. I'm going to go figure out what I need to do and why I'm so into this validation thing. And until then, I'm not going to approach you in any way sexually until we can do this in a way that I know it's not out of obligation. Now, I had tried this, not this exact way, but something similar for hundreds of times, I think.
And I think it was more of a, fine, I'll just leave you alone, or fine, I'm going to withdraw to kind of bring you in pursuit towards me, right?
It was a punishment. I could
Yeah.
punish you by withdrawing or going one down and saying, hey, I'm the victim here. You should be giving me sex because, you're married to me and this is what we're supposed to be doing. There was all kinds of baggage behind it. And I could have come in that exact same way and asked. And then the intention behind it was really to go back to that one down and try to extract something out of Amy. And it wouldn't have worked at all. And so many times when I'm coaching people where I brought this up, they bring this up because they get to a point where they get so frustrated. They're like, should I go on a sex fast? Should we stop? Should I say I don't want sex anymore?
Or should I stop pursuing?
Or should I stop pursuing? And to me, it's a really challenging question to ask because yes, it might be the right thing to do. Or no, it could be very much the wrong thing to do. So there's a lot of questions behind it of what is the intention and what are you trying to extract or get out of it by doing this?
So there comes this point when you recognize that you've been doing something. For me, over functioning to try to manage my own anxiety. For you, trying to get out of validation. You recognize it. You're starting to see it everywhere. I mean, my over functioning was literally in every area of my life except our sexuality.
I was thinking validation at everywhere. We talked about that, right? Validation horror right here.
And you see it. You decide you want to change it. And you come up against this terror barrier, shall I say, when it's super scary. You have to really, I guess, kind of dig deep within yourself to start doing, choosing, behaving in ways that come from the right space, the right motivation. And by right, I don't mean right as in wrong. I mean right as in true or part of an integral based in your values in your solid sense, not in trying to get or earn or take. And that is scary because it's extremely vulnerable. And you recognize if I actually choose to do this from who I am, I could get rejected.
Absolutely.
And that would now really hurt because I've actually now truly shown up. And if I'm truly showing up, then that rejection is really, could be really personal.
And from a higher desire perspective, you're used to the rejection, right? That's what you feel like you get constantly. And so it's even more scary because you're realizing I'm being rejected and she doesn't even know half the things that I'm struggling with or dealing with or thinking about or desiring or really know me. And if she's rejecting me now, what's going to happen when I'm completely honest and open and I'm not trying to manipulate the situation, but I'm coming from a place of integrity? Can I handle that rejection? And again, it's scary because there's no control there. It's the one thing that marriage does and why it grows us up so much and causes us to change and be better is because ultimately we have zero control over what our spouse decides to do.
We want to think we have control and we do a lot of things to seem like we have control. That's what my overfunctioning was, thinking that I actually had control over helping you choose me. That also showed up in pornography in the ways I tried to control you there. Like, you have to choose me. And in my questions, I remember asking you, especially after you traveled, did you choose me? Did you choose me? Again, that was my anxiety showing up, and I was over functioning, trying to manage that and really not to give you a choice. And so when you let go of that anxiety, for me, that meant not asking every time you went on vacation, did you choose me?
On vacation, did Florian sleep there?
Oh, whoops. Not asking.
She thought I went on vacation every time I went.
That's what I used to call us work trips. That was funny. When you went on work trips. Oh, that is a funny slip. When you went on trips, work business trips.
There you go, atta girl.
To not ask, but to stay steady in myself. It is actually terrifying. It really, truly is. And so myself, you, clients have bumped up against this terror barrier, right? If I actually do things from like the solid version of me, the part of me that's not trying to get or earn or justify or take or manipulate, and then the answer is no, or a rejection, or I'm not chosen, then what? And that's that risk that's an inherent part of marriage that actually has to be there. If we take away the risk, we take away that opportunity for each person to actually choose. But we actually don't want our spouse to have the opportunity to choose. We want to take that risk away. We want to be like in this guarantee that they will choose us and that we're worthy of it. And so when you move into the space of like doing and being and acting from what's actually in alignment with you, it becomes very scary.
Yeah. And look, it's human nature to have this regress self, right? It's part of our mental makeup. Our brains react in a way that they think they're keeping us safe in this regress place. So when you come across it, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're doing what God just created you to do. Your brain is saying, hey, you're not safe here because, and causing you to react instead of think about where you're at and causing you to act in your own integrity. And it's much easier to get in that spot because it happens so quickly, right? Your brain just reacts about it and it happens so quickly. So we talk about being an intentional place, being into your integrity, knowing who you are and what you believe and being okay with that, and then stepping forward in that. And when you come into alignment with that, when you come into a place where you're like, okay, I know who I am and I am okay with myself, then you can start showing up in a way that isn't trying to get something or change something or control something, in a way that's trying to be a true partner with your spouse.
So I'm thinking of examples. For example, when you started becoming a partner in the home and the housework and the chores, and you were mopping because you wanted to contribute and you saw the need, not because you were trying to get something, it was a drastic change. Or when I started leaning in more to our sexuality, not to service you or manage you or keep you from being pouty or looking at porn, it was a change. But I think at first, there's there is always the danger that your spouse won't recognize that change or won't want to reciprocate.
And that's the really scary part, right? And we talk about control. There's this inherent risk of being rejected and not understood
Or not chosen.
or not chosen, right? There's inherent risk. But the key to it is that the risk is there anyway when you're trying to manipulate it. Your spouse can track you when you're trying to do things to get something. And that risk is there anyway, but now you're coming at it from a regressed self, so you can't handle it. When you enter into this place where you're no longer coming from a regress place, but you're coming from your intentional place, you are prepared to understand and handle whatever comes back at you. And instead of it making it mean something about you, it now is what is around the circumstance, what's happening, what's causing this feeling, or why is Amy acting this way? And I tell my clients this all the time, like you can never, ever go wrong if you lean into curiosity. If you ask the question of why do you feel this way?
What's going
Not
on
because
for
you're trying to
you?
extract something, but because you're really curious, because you want to know where they're coming from so you can better understand. And you don't have to agree with it. We're not asking everyone to agree and be the exact same. That would be boring and that would not be a partnership. But instead of saying, I have to be right, you're wrong, I need this, you should give it to me, it's more of a curiosity. Where do you sit here? Why is this the way it is for you? Can you help me understand where you're coming from?
I'm thinking of when probably the first 15 years of our marriage, we couldn't even talk about divorce or the possibility that we couldn't be married. We wouldn't even like allow ourselves to consider that that was a choice. And while I'm not here trying to advocate that couples get divorced, I do think that part of recognizing I do think that you have to be able to have a choice in order to be able to actually have an intimate marriage. And so there was a turning point in our relationship where we said, you know, it is possible that we wouldn't choose each other. And in the case of that, that is when something like divorce might be necessary. And that it is possible for one of us to not choose.
Yep.
And it was kind of like this scary feeling because I don't like to spend time thinking about it, but it is, I mean, we had to actually give each other the freedom to say, you don't have to choose me.
It
And
was
I have the capacity to make a choice.
right. It was scary, but freeing in some ways too, right?
Yes.
It was like, and the crazy thing about that is we played the God card 100%, right? Like we made covenants between God and ourselves, and well, we're never going to be there to break these covenants. And so we even put it to that spot where it was like, well, we can't do this. But it really was a freeing moment where we're like, yeah, if one of us decides not to choose, then we should get out of this relationship.
Not lighthearted and without thought, but recognizing that that actually was the inherent choice and risk that was part of this relationship.
Because now when I say, Amy, I choose you, it's a whole different meaning because I have the choice of not choosing her. And because I'm coming out of a place of integrity, and I'm not always, by the way, when I say this, we mess up a lot, but we recognize it now and try to fix it. When I come out of a place of integrity, it's also knowing that I'm not trying to extract something from her, or I have the choice to actually choose or lean into her. And that means way more. Like that she knows who I am. She knows all about me, my good, my bad, my ugly. And she gets to choose whether to choose me or not. And I'm the same way. And that means a whole heck of a lot more than it did in the past.
I acknowledge how difficult it is to talk about a subject like this, but I think it has to be inherently part of a relationship. We often also have to acknowledge that one partner can legitimately get to a space of integrity, can be acting in honesty and goodness, can be choosing their spouse, and the spouse cannot choose back. And that's unfortunate. It's not fun. It's painful. It's hurtful. It's not something that we like to talk about, but it is a reality. And in that reality, you have to be able to claim your power to have a choice as well.
Underlying everything, I think that's the number one thing. God wanted us to have a choice, right? And it's the number one thing within an intimate relationship. You will never have an intimate relationship if you don't have a choice. And if you don't stop hiding and come from a good centered spot of where you know who you are and what you want and what you desire, and you're okay to stand up for that. Not in a mean or a vicious way, but in a kind way of saying, this is what I want and desire.
And I respect myself too much to let go of this.
And I'm going to stop playing games with trying to manipulate you to give me what I think I want.
Mm-hmm.
Because the crazy part about it is that sometimes it works.
What do you mean?
I could manipulate Amy into doing things I wanted. I'm pretty good at it, right? Naturally. But when it happened, and we'll talk about sex. When I convinced Amy to have sex with me, even though she didn't desire it and she was doing it for me, I could have sex and then I could feel awful, terrible, like I'd extracted and taken something from somebody.
Because you were.
Because I was. And that's where it becomes really difficult because you have this desire as a higher desire person to be sexual and to be intimate and to be engaged.
Which is a good desire.
Which is amazing desire. And when you're in a regressed state, the only way you know how to get it is to manipulate your way into it. And
which is not a
good place.
Not a good strategy.
And you can get it sometimes and you feel empty and awful.
Mm-hmm.
I remember oftentimes Amy, wouldn't remember our sexual encounters.
Nope, not at all.
I was like, oh, that was great. And she's like, I don't remember. Because it was something that she had done out of obligation and kind of almost put out of her mind because it wasn't something that brought her
I think it was
joy.
actually more dissociative. In order to be in that duty and obligation space, you kind of have to dissociate from some part of yourself. And that dissociation is what blocked my memory.
I remember we heard a study that was done about women that were having sex out of obligation with their spouse. And they often showed the same signs as someone that had PTSD about something. So there was PTSD symbols there. I remember when I heard that, man, that was one of the things that pushed me towards like, I never, ever, 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 ever want to have a sexual encounter that's out of obligation.
But let's frame this up. So let's say you have done that, you backed off and you said, "Hey, I don't ever want to have an encounter with you unless it's genuine and you're choosing," and you've backed off. And let's pretend in this scenario I didn't step in. Let's pretend I didn't move forward. And you're in the space of a sexless marriage or a marriage without intimacy. What then are your choices?
Yeah, it's hard. I have clients in this spot, right, that are definitely this way. And we've spent a lot of time trying to get to that point where we want that spouse to step in, and we've tried to do everything we can to that client themselves to work on themselves. And that's the one thing that I love to talk about from the very beginning is we're going to work on making you the best version of you. So no matter what happens in this relationship, you're going to be a better version of yourself. And then if the spouse doesn't decide to step in, you can decide what to do. And a non-decision is a decision.
Yes.
When they're not answering the question or following through, they are saying something. They're saying, I am not willing to step into this. And we work really hard to try to figure that out with the spouses, and we work with them to try to, but there is a point where they're going to make that decision and say, I cannot, or I'm not unwilling to do this. And them doing that is actually more kind than pretending. Even though you think, oh, that's awful that it would say, I want a sexless marriage and I'm okay with that. I don't want to be intimate with you. At least it gives you a choice at that point to know. And you can make a decision. And one of the decisions could be, I am okay in being in a non-intimate relationship. And I want to stay in this partnership because it has more benefits to me than the lack thereof of intimacy and the choice to stay in there. But then another choice is I need to step out and find something else. The problem is we stay in that muddy middle right there where we're
straddling.
I had a client tell me like all my choices suck. And I say, yes, all your choices suck. So you've got to make a choice out of your own integrity of what you really want. Leaving the marriage sucks. Staying in the marriage sucks. But where are you at in integrity? And if it is, hey, I'm okay staying here, then that's fine. But then you can't go back to your regressed self where you're trying to manipulate and get things out of that spouse because you know where they stand. They've said, this is where I stand, and you've chosen to stay in that place because that's what you chose.
It's not an easy discussion to have, and it's not a light decision to make. And it does involve a lot of different factors. And I think a real search of your heart. And I think it often involves letting that spouse know, like, hey, this is what I really, really desire. And maybe the spouse isn't capable for different reasons, or maybe they aren't wanting to. And so then you have to decide, this is what I'm choosing to do. And again, there are many factors to that decision. And sometimes it is choosing the best of the crappy decisions. But what I want to say is that risk and that choice has to be a part of a marriage. As terrible as that scenario is that we just talked about, it still has to exist in order for there to be a chance or an opportunity for spouses to choose each other. There has to be freedom to choose, and there has to be the space to choose. And if there is space to choose, then one of the choices is no, and one of them is yes. And we like to pretend that there isn't a no, or do all the things to mitigate that no, or pretend that no doesn't exist, because it hurts, it's disappointing, it's painful. But we have to also honor that that no needs to exist.
Yep, you can be very respected in deciding to stay in a marriage that doesn't have intimacy. Like, you can do it, and that's a respectful choice to make. The unrespectful choice to make is trying to manipulate and change someone when they're not willing to change, and not making a choice and staying in that muddy middle and truly trying to change the situation. And we talked about it just in our last podcast that it may look good, it may look heroic, right? Really, I'm going to dote on this person. I'm going to take care of them. I am going to do everything I can. I will be the one that initiates sex all the time. I'll be the one that takes care of this person in our sexual relationship because I know they don't want it. I will, and it sounds like you're taking care of or doing it, but you're over functioning and not giving them a choice. And that's not respectable. The respectable thing is to give them a choice. And it's the scariest thing. It's scary as hell to do that because here's the person that you love the most, and you've if you don't do this and you kind of keep going on, you're like, oh, well, maybe there's a chance. Maybe they do care about me enough, or maybe they'll change enough that they'll step into the relationship and there will be intimate sexual relationship. And so there's always that maybe that you're hanging on to. But until you make the choice of saying, I'm going to stay in and not manipulate, or I'm going to tell my spouse that I can no longer be in this relationship because I want an intimate relationship and you won't step into it, then if in that muddy middle, there will never be an intimate relationship ever. And I've had these hard conversations with clients that I've coached. I'm like, there's no answer. You're like, you're in this middle right here, and there's no intimacy here. You will not find intimacy, and that's what you want the most is intimacy. You continue this, you will not find it because you can't have it in a place where you're not open and honest and it's really saying this is what I desire, and not only this is what I desire, but not in a way that's manipulative or a way that's an ultimatum. And this is the hard part, is that you got to come from the right place. It's honestly saying, I cannot live in a non-intimate relationship.
I can't respect myself and my integrity and stay in this place, in this relationship.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've gone around with clients about, well, isn't that an ultimatum and isn't that manipulative? And
it could be.
It comes back to what we started the topic here. It depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from a place of integrity and
declaration,
honest, that's not manipulation.
Right, an honest declaration of who you are and where you are, then it's not manipulative, it's honest. If you really are trying to scare them or pull away to get them to come towards you, it is absolutely manipulative. Yeah. And so one of the ways or maybe like can do a litmus test of whether or not you're trying to control is how vulnerable are you feeling? It is extraordinarily vulnerable to let them know. In some places, what I've seen in couples is one has been accommodating and trying or managing for so long that they have lost their desire to even choose the other spouse. And to admit that and to say, in order for this desire to come back, things would have to change. That vulnerability, super scary, super terrifying, super just, you feel like your world is just opened up and crumbled on you. And if you're trying to control, you'll feel more of a sense of like power or one-upmanship. And that is not the intent. It's really watching for that vulnerability.
And if you're in this space, all's not lost, right? We have seen couples come back from the brink, like literally, we're divorcing, we're done. And thinking that there's no other way to go about it, and been able to help them see themselves and have both spouses decide to step in honestly. And so,
and I also have to say, on the other hand, I've had spouses who have chosen to divorce and are now thriving in their separate places. And so we've seen it go both ways. What we really want is the thriving of the individual, what's in integrity with them, and what would help them grow and develop as people. And sometimes that is together and sometimes it is separate.
Right. So if you find yourself stuck in this place of despair, thinking that I don't know if my spouse will choose me, and you find yourself acting in a way that's not in integrity, know that that's the normal place to be. That's like natural human reaction. And it takes a lot of effort and work to step back and understand where that's at, and that it's difficult to come at things in your own integrity. I fail to do it all the time still, right?
It takes a lot of courage, and people mistake courage for feeling really good.
It sucks.
Courage feels really terrible, especially in the moment of exposure or vulnerability. It feels extraordinarily terrible. Generally, afterwards is when the courage feels empowering, or when you feel a sense of pride or respect for yourself. But in the moment, courage does not feel great.
No, it really does. It's difficult to do. So again, we want you to go back and think about how you're approaching this.
What is your
motivation?
Why?
Yeah, what is your whys? What is your motivation? Am I asking this question of my spouse to manipulate or try to get something from them? Or am I asking them in curiosity to understand them? Am I just
afraid to be alone and I'm trying to manipulate them to choose me?
Yeah. Am I okay with myself and who I am, so that I can bring my best self to them and then ask them in a way that's not manipulative, but ask them a way that's out of curiosity and also out of letting them know who you really are?
and maybe where you're at. Sometimes this is done in a letter, sometimes it's done in a conversation, sometimes it's done over a mix of both or in a coaching session. And they are really, really vulnerable, scary, revealing, exposing moments. And I applaud those who are willing to take that leap. It is a scary leap. But without that leap, you sort of always stay in this middle in a place that you don't respect. And that isn't productive either.
It will take time as you do this, right? As you step back and give space for your spouse, it's not like they may not jump right in, or they may jump in a little bit. They may test the waters, put their toe in and see. And the problem is when we usually do that, it gets more uncomfortable. It doesn't really alleviate the pressure right away. And so we go, oh, it's very oftentimes we start becoming more differentiated, and we start saying what we truly think and being honest with us. And it gets a little more painful. And the problem is people will go, I know for us, we would go there and it'll be painful. So we withdraw, right?
Yeah,
I'm not going
pull
to touch
back.
that burning stove again. And then we were right at that moment of breaking through and going to the other side, but we refused to go there
It's
because
kind of like the terror barrier. You bump up against it and you're like, oh, that's scary. So you pull back. And the courage to walk through that terror barrier, which is really exposing, which says, here's what I'm choosing. Here's what I want. What do you want? Is scary.
it is. And really asking out of, again, integrity, to wanting to know or wanting to be known. It really comes down to those two things, right? That's what an intimate relationship is allowing yourself to be known and wanting to and desiring to know the person, all of them. Do I love everything about Amy? No. Sorry to tell you this, and I break your heart, babe, right here in front of everybody.
Oh no, I don't love everything about myself.
and so being honest about those things, but understanding where we're coming from and how much we love that other person, that we're allowing them to know us, but also being curious enough to know them, even in the worst parts. And the craziest thing is, more often than not, I probably overlook and understand, not overlook, I guess, but I probably have more grace for those things that you don't like about yourself than you have grace for yourself.
You probably do. I think I have more grace for the parts you don't like about yourself too.
Absolutely.
But I think there is this fear, or it maybe almost feels like a threat, that if the other person has the choice to choose you, maybe they won't.
Yes.
And that's what you bump up against. And that's what we help couples walk through. Because I think in order for there to be a relationship, you both have to make a choice. And there are a lot of different choices that you can make, but it needs to be a choice.
Well, an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
You can have all kinds of different relationships, but an intimate relationship cannot, nor will it ever be, if one person is trying to get something or you're not being honest about who you are,
or what you really desire,
right,
or how you really feel and think,
or you're not being open to listen to the other person and where they're coming from.
Yeah. But that's scary. Again, to really know someone else is scary.
When I started asking things out of intention and not being so manipulative, and asking out of curiosity, coming from the higher desire person and having that be most of our marriage, that's what you were used to. What was it like on your side? Do you remember?
I'm trying to go back to the moment when you asked me what it was like to be married to you.
I mean, I think that was the big one, but there was been lots of
Because I
times
think
since then.
before that, I would ask you questions and you would ask me questions, but we weren't really asking. What we were seeking was validation.
Yeah, we didn't really want to know.
Like, tell me that I'm enough. Tell me that I'm good. Tell me. Like,
so how do you know it was different when I asked you that?
I just tracked and mapped. I don't know that I could place a word on it to describe. I just could see that you really wanted to know and weren't asking for me to say, oh, I just think you're great. You're the best. I love you so much. Da, 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 da.
Was that scary for you?
Yes. It was so scary to actually reveal what I struggled with most with you. Was terrifying.
What made you decide to be brave and step into it?
It felt like in order to move through the wall that we had kept bumping up against, something different needed to happen. And it felt like more honesty was what was going to do that. And so I remember thinking in that moment, like saying this, and I don't even remember what I said, which is so funny. This could make or break us. Like this could really be. And we've had a couple of those moments, I think, from your side and from my side when you're like, all right, this could be the thing. This could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And we just, our relationship then will just deconstruct. And I remember feeling the heart racing and my blood pumping and just being like, can I actually say these words? And it was scary because I saw them land on you and I saw the impact of that land. And I wanted to lighten that, but it actually needed to be exactly what it was. And kudos to you for saying, no, let me absorb this, let me receive this. You are right. And I need to metabolize through this.
Yeah. So I guess I wanted to go there just so they realize that from the other spouse that has been listening to this way of trying to extract and manipulate and go about it, when that stops and something changes, it's just as scary for them as it is for the person that says, I'm going to stop trying to manipulate and extract something.
Yeah. Because even if the pattern is negative and terrible, it's familiar.
Yep.
And familiar, even if it's terrible,
You know
is
what it is.
preferred.
Yeah.
Right. You know what it is. And so you will stay in a negative, terrible pattern just because it's familiar. And when you
Isn't that what your aggressive brain wants?
Yes, it wants familiar. When you sense that something's actually changed, you don't actually now know the outcome. You don't actually know what pattern you're in. You don't actually know what's going to happen. And that feels terrifying.
I think, again, we want to mention this. We talked about it 2 podcasts ago from our friend that asked us the question, that the number one thing is really to get a hold of yourself and understand who you are and be solid. Because if you try to go step in this way and not, it could be catastrophe. Because if you're not truly solid in yourself and you're asking those questions and you're being open and honest and you're not ready to hear the answers, it's not going to go well. So first step is really being solid in who you are, knowing that you are a good person and that you truly have a righteous intent of being a good partner with this person, and that you're willing to expose all your flaws and let them know who you are because you care about them enough to do that. But it doesn't mean that you're broken and that there's something inherently wrong with you and that you're a terrible person. We're human. And so much of the time we try to get rid of that, right? We try to go against God himself by saying we're not going to live in this human nature and we're going to be perfect and there's nothing wrong with us. And we can't love ourselves because we know that we're not perfect. And it's kind of crazy when we think about it, right? Because it's the exact opposite of being godlike. It's the exact opposite of living in this human nature, because we are here to make our own choices and to have our own intents and to learn from them and to grow from them, not to be perfect.
Perfect is really, or perfection, I should say, is really a fantasy. And when you were saying you've really got to be solid in yourself, to me, when I think of solid in myself, it means acknowledging my flaws and my strengths and seeing both as part of a whole of who I am. And I need both. My flaws are where I have capacity to develop, and my strengths are what help me develop through them. And the goal is development. Our soul desires to grow. And I need both of those elements in order to grow.
I don't think it requires this big moment like maybe we had. I'm not trying to say you need to set up the big moment like us. It's what happened for us and it's what worked.
Your story can be very different.
Yeah, it can be very different. It can be very in a different way. And maybe it's just the small things, right? We talk about our emotional check-ins that we try to do every day. And maybe it's being more honest in those, just being honest about who you are and how you really feel.
And what hurts and what brings you joy and what you want to create more of and what you want to move away from or let go of.
And doing it out of integrity, not out of manipulation or trying to get something out of it. And it can start there, right? In the smallest of ways to change a relationship. I've seen that happen too, from the smallest things to start changing the way that we interact with our spouses. become closer to them because we're more in tech place in ourselves, and we know who we are, willing to be honest.
Again, it's scary. But I think what we're trying to do is encourage you to step towards the fear, to step towards the vulnerable, to step towards the honest, to step towards to step towards being more honest, because that honesty is really what will help you create intimacy.
Yeah, I think this episode got a little more heavy than I thought it was going to. So I'm feeling, So what I want to say is there is light at the end of that tunnel, that if you can get to a place of more honesty, the marital relationship is the greatest thing in the whole entire world. It is the best thing that God ever invented. When he invented this relationship, that was the best thing ever. And so there is a lot of,
again, the
positivity.
reason it's the best is because it inherently has the risk.
It makes you, yes.
It has
that
both.
Is true.
You have to have both.
You can't, there's nothing good that comes from, you don't have to work or have a risk to go do, right? All the reward requires some risk.
Yes.
And be involved. And when you're willing to put that on the line for someone else because you care about them so much, and they decide to reciprocate back to you, there's nothing better in this whole entire world. I love my kids. I enjoy my family. I love my horse a lot.
A lot.
My kids have told everyone that it's my favorite child, and they're right. So much for Father's Day, they got me a painting of my horse, so they just admitted it. So Clifford, I love you if you're listening out there. But there's nothing, even in that relationship, there's nothing comes close to having that true intimate relationship that you can have with a spouse, because they are willing to accept who you are and know you in a way that no one else knows. Me. No one. They never will. And to know that and have Amy wake up every day and decide to choose me, there's nothing greater in this whole entire world. So as deep and heavy as this podcast got, I want to end in letting you know the joy and happiness that's on the other side if we can get to a place of true honesty and an integral place with ourselves. And it's not perfect.
No.
We F it up all the time. Probably me more than Amy.
We probably should do one of those. We listen and we don't trust.
I don't want to do that one because who knows what's going to come out.
Oh, we listen and we don't judge.
We don't judge. Yeah, we listen and we don't judge. Amy wanted to do that, and I said, nah, I'm not ready for that one yet. Not in public. We'll do that tonight. Or in
emotion
sharing, maybe. But yeah, it is the greatest blessing, and that's why we love doing this. It's so much fun. I didn't have any idea that doing a podcast would be so much fun, and to do it with my partner here in crime, because we definitely make crimes. It is amazing. And so we're so blessed to be in this position, and we truly just want to help as many people as we can. I hope that it never comes across like that we're above or talking down to anyone, or we have this all figured out, because we don't have it all figured out, but we do have some pretty big wounds that we've healed from, that we can hopefully help anyone else heal from too. And that's what we truly desire.
We desire to create the potential for you to thrive and to help lead you toward that, because it is glorious.
Yes. So please like and subscribe to this podcast. That helps us get it out. Share it with your friends. We're seeing it grow. It's exciting. I might look at that stats.
You're such a stat guy. I never look at stats.
I'm daily looking at the stats. I don't even know where
to find them.
Help those stats go up, because I love it. But it really is fun to do and enjoy. And heck, if we've had one person say this has been a blessing to them, that's one enough for me. And the opportunity I get to do with this with Amy is worth it. So we'll keep doing it no matter what. But please go like and subscribe and add some comments. Email us if you have questions you want us to talk about. And then come join us, langfordlifecoaching.com. There's tons of resources on there. We have lots of blogs. We have books. We have our podcast posted up there. We have other podcasts posted up there. And the most important thing we have is that little button up in the right-hand corner. It's on every page for a reason.
Free consult.
Free consult. Come talk to us. And literally, if you don't think you can afford to work with us as a coach, just do the free consult. It won't be offensive to us. If you say, hey, I want to spend 45 minutes with you talking to you, and I can't spend any more money working with you, that's fine. Sign up. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to help you as much as we can. Thank you for listening.
We appreciate it.
Until next time,
keep undressing your intimacy.
Bye-bye.